If you were to ask me 6 months ago if I could swap my screen time for reading or if I could spend hours on a weekend reading, I would have laughed. I would have been like, absolutely not. You ever feel like you want to read more books but can't seem to get started? Life gets so busy and finding the time to read feels impossible. But what if we made reading more fun by turning it into a game? I've been seeing these videos all over YouTube where people use random generators to basically choose how many hours they're going to be reading. And I really want to participate, but it just kind of feels out of reach for me because a lot of people are reading upwards to like 7-8 hours a day. And since I work a 9 to 5, that's just not possible for me to do. And I feel like that's out of reach for a lot of people. So I don't want to be left out and I want to make this more inclusive for everybody, especially people who are working full-time jobs, people who have other responsibilities. Maybe if you're like a parent or something, then I feel like this is something that you could also do. So I am going to use a random generator to choose how many hours I'm reading this weekend, but I'm going to make it more realistic. Even though I'd love to read for 8 hours a day, it's just not going to happen. So I'm thinking we can do it by 30-minute increments. So starting it from 30 minutes and then maybe ranging up until 3 hours. And I feel like that would be pretty doable for me so that I can still enjoy reading without feeling like I can't do anything else on the weekend, because on the weekends I still have to meal prep and clean and do all of these errands. And hopefully this gives you a little bit of inspiration as well if you're finding yourself in a little bit of a reading slump, or maybe you're just having a hard time getting started. This might motivate you to try this challenge as well so that you can read more books. And you don't have to do 30-minute increments. You can adapt this to however much time you have. So you can do like 10 to 15-minute increments, whatever works for you. So I have a random generator right in front of me on my laptop. So that's what we're gonna do. I put in 30-minute increments from 30 minutes up to 3 hours. And we're gonna see how many hours I'm gonna read today. Okay, so I was getting really nervous because I thought it was gonna land on 3 hours. And even though I have read for longer than that before, when I did my swapping my screen time for reading video, I read for over 4 hours. And honestly, that was a lot. I was really glad that it landed on 30 minutes. I picked 3 books and that was probably over ambitious because I don't think I'm gonna finish 3 books this weekend. I think it would be pretty amazing to even finish 1 book this weekend, but I like having options. For this challenge, I have a fantasy. This is The Lost Story by Meg Schaffer, and she wrote The Wishing Game, which I've heard good things about, but haven't read myself. Something about this plot just felt very cozy and whimsical, which is perfect for fall. The next book I have is a romance, and this is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I like having romances when I do this challenge because I feel like romances are just super easy to read and they're lighthearted, and honestly sometimes I just need to turn my brain off, especially after a long week of working. I just want to chill and relax. So this book follows the story of Emma and Justin, and they are both cursed when it comes to love. They're cursed because whenever they date somebody after they break up, that person goes on to find their soulmate. So in order to break the curse, these two get the idea to date each other to essentially nullify the curse. And I was getting really like rom-com vibes when I was reading about the synopsis of this. And I heard that this book actually covers some darker topics in here, like traumatic pasts and difficult family relationships. The last one that we're gonna read for this challenge is the one that I'm currently reading, and this is A Sea of Song and Sirens, and I'm actually like halfway through here. And this is a romantasy. I'm kind of in my romantasy era right now after reading A Court of Thorns and Roses. This follows the story of a young girl named Marin. She lives on these really beautiful islands that are secluded, and one day she sees a person drowning, so she goes in to save him and they become friends, but later on he goes to betray her and then she sets out to take revenge over him. I think that the first 10% of the book was actually a little bit harder for me to get into, just because there's different terminology in here and also geography that you need to know to get the book. So I had to keep coming back to the reference and being like, what does that word mean? But after a while, you start to pick up the context of it, and then you don't have to go back and read the references anymore. So let's set our timer for 30 minutes and see how many pages we can read. So I just finished reading for 30 minutes. Whenever you guys read, do you ever just like check how much progress you've made by looking at where your bookmark is? There's just something so satisfying about moving the bookmark and then being able to see how much progress you've made, which is why, even though I've been loving reading on my Kindle, I still prefer physical books. We've gotten a lot more backstory on the MMC, which is good because we've only really seen one perspective from Marin's perspective, and she hates his guts. And we just met some new characters as well, so I'm really curious to see how they're going to impact the story moving forward. I'm looking forward to reading more of this, and 30 minutes went by pretty quickly. I'll probably read a little bit more tonight to make a little more progress because I do want to finish this book this weekend so I can get started on those other books. I do have some errands I have to do, so hopefully we'll find some time to do our reading challenge and see how many hours we're going to read tomorrow. I read for an extra 30 minutes last night. I did get a little farther, so I'm hoping that I get a little bit longer of a time today. I really want to finish this book because it's starting to get really dramatic. Okay, so for today I got 2.5 hours, which is kind of what I was hoping for, a little bit longer than I wanted to go, but I think it'll be a good challenge. I read for 2.5 hours. My eyes are a little bit tired. I feel like I'm getting better at reading for longer periods of time because I did my swapping screen time for reading video a while back, and I think I had to read for over 4 hours, and that was the most reading I've ever done in a day in like 10 or 15 years. I'm actually almost finished with this book. 70% of this book is more about the romance, and then 20 to 30% of it is more about the fantasy. And when I read romantasy, I feel like I prefer it to be more evenly split. So I think the reason why I really loved the second ACOTAR book, A Court of Mist and Fury, is because I feel like there was enough of the fantasy and the magic and the history and the lore that kept me drawn in. I feel like the reason I'm not loving the romance is because it's an enemies to lovers, and I just don't understand why somebody would like someone who treats them so poorly. But like I said, I think I'm missing something. There's gonna be a reveal, so maybe I'll change my mind once I find out why he's been acting so weird and like terrible to her. So it better be good. All right, so new day means we get to spin the wheel again. So I'm gonna get my laptop here and let's see how long I'm gonna read today. I am so determined to finish A Sea of Song and Sirens right here because I really, really want to start reading just for the summer. My friend actually recommended this to me, and I've already read a book by Abby Jimenez before. I think I've read one. It was, gosh, I can't remember. Oh, I can't remember the name. I read Yours Truly, and everyone talked about this book when it came out, and I had to see for myself if this is a book that I like. When I first got back into reading, I started really, really small. I started for just like 10 to 15 minutes a day, and even that was really hard for me because I was just so used to spending my free time on my phone or watching shows, and that's just a lot of like stimulation. So reading a book, sitting down, is more boring. When I first started, I was like, okay, this is like really hard for me to get into because I just want to like watch my show or play video games. But just that habit of starting a little bit every single day honestly made it so much easier to build up to how much I'm reading now. So if you were to ask me 6 months ago if I could swap my screen time for reading or if I could spend hours on a weekend reading, I would have laughed. I would have been like, absolutely not. However, now that I've done these challenges and I've made reading more of a priority, it's actually a lot easier to just sit down and read a book for a couple hours. And I think a big part of it is just like building up that stamina, you know? Kind of like with running. When you start running, you're not gonna run a marathon when you first start, you're gonna slowly build up to it. So I think the same goes with reading or really anything that you wanna try. So that's just like my little tip for you all who maybe wanna read more books, spend more time reading books, but have found that it's been really tricky and like hard to get into. Start there, or you could even do this challenge and adjust it so that it's, you know, makes more sense for you. Okay, so I want to read for at least 2 hours today because I want to finish this book. So let's see what it says. Okay, so I got the same thing I got yesterday, 2.5 hours, which actually works out perfectly. And it works out because I've already done like all of my errands and all the things that I need to do. So really I just have free time to read. I think a big part of clearing space for my weekends is honestly just doing more things throughout the week, you know? So I used to save all of my errands for the end of the week. So I would go grocery shopping, do my laundry, clean the house projects, whatever. I would try to cram it all on the weekend, and then I would find that I just didn't have time to do any of my hobbies. So what really works for me is just setting aside like something to do every single day, even if I'm working, so that it kind of lessens the load on the weekends, you know? So one thing that I do differently now is I actually go grocery shopping during the week. So I usually go to Costco. My husband and I love going to Costco, but we would go to Costco on like a Sunday, and that's when it's the busiest. We go to Costco midweek now, so we'll usually go on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and there's less people, and then I actually will just kind of prep in the middle of the week. So if you're curious about how to save more time during the week so that you can do more on the weekends, let me know in the comments down below, and I'd be more than happy to make a video for you guys, but I'm getting distracted. We'll get back to reading A Sea of Song and Sirens, and I'll check back in with you all later. Okay, so I feel like I need to read the second book. So it definitely left me on a cliffhanger, and I did say that it was sort of building up to this reveal, and I kind of predicted that was gonna happen based off of all of the little like breadcrumbs and all of the foreshadowing that was in the book, but I think that it was pretty well done. I mean, I knew it was gonna happen, but I feel like the payoff was pretty good. So I've actually finished this with about 30 minutes left on my timer, and I think that's because I just kind of like read through it really quickly. It's actually pretty easy to read, and I feel like the pace definitely picked up towards the end. There was just like a lot of action at the very end of the book, so it was like really exciting and thrilling, and I just kept like breezing through it basically. I have to sit on it a little bit more because I did have some things I didn't like about the book, but just first impressions, I'm pretty impressed because this is Whit Stanfield's debut novel, and for a debut novel, I feel like she did a really good job. I'm convinced that I want to read the second book in this series. Overall, positive thoughts on this book. I feel like I kept getting drawn back to the book, so I think that's a positive thing if you're looking forward to reading it. So I'm glad that I picked up this book, A Sea of Song and Sirens. This was just like a really random pick. I don't even know why I picked it up. It wasn't on my TBR, and I haven't really seen people talk about this book. I actually discovered this book because on my library page there was like, oh, new releases, and this just happened to be one of them. So I was like, oh, why not? I like romantasy, I like mermaids. Pleasantly surprised with A Sea of Song and Sirens. Okay, but now what we've all been waiting for, at least what I've been waiting for, is to start reading Just for the Summer. Don't know how I can explain. So So I actually went past my timer. I've been reading for about 45 minutes now, and I got to chapter 5, and I just wanted to keep going. I felt like I was kind of on a roll after finishing one book, and that really helped me with the momentum to pick up a second one. Plus, it's romance and Abby Jimenez, so it's like super easy to read so far. I feel like this book so far is focusing more on the emotional side of getting to know somebody. I think it's pretty refreshing to read about two people who just connect on an emotional level. So without giving anything away, so far what I'm getting from each of the characters is that they're pretty used to having a lot of responsibilities in life. And so I think they connect on that level. They seem pretty compatible right away, even though I've only read like 5 chapters, but I like that they're taking the time to get to know each other, and it's more about the emotional connection than the physical connection. That pretty much wraps up this random generator challenge. I really wanted to know how much reading I'd be able to get done in a weekend. So in total, I think I read for almost 6 hours in the past 3 days. I still feel like I got to do other things. I didn't really watch too much TV this weekend, so I think that really saved me when it came to just managing my time and getting through this challenge. But I feel like this is a lot more doable than swapping my screen time for reading in just one day. I really liked this challenge. I mean, I would do it again, but maybe I would do it over a week just to see how much reading I could get in a week. I think I'm just gonna end this video right here. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, and consider subscribing to the channel if you wanna see more from me. Let me know how much reading that you get done on a weekend. And as always, take care of yourself because you deserve it, and I'll see you in my next video.